In case you missed it, Old Blood Noise Endeavors has been revisiting some of their most beloved and interesting pedals. I've already covered a few of those, including the Bathing Liminal Delay and the Black Fountain Stereo. Now we can add Sunlight Stereo, the dynamically held reverb pedal, to the new lineup. So let's hear it. Welcome to Get Offset. My name is Emily, and you are like a ray of sunshine. OBNE sent me Sunlight Stereo out of the blue, and I'm filming it. They didn't ask me to, but I suspect they hoped I would. This is one of those pedals that is going to take a good deal of explaining, so please use the timestamps in the video description to skip ahead rather than being frustrated because I'm talking. The new Sunlight Stereo combines elements of the original Sunlight as well as the Procession reverb, if you're familiar with those. The original Sunlight reverb, which I demoed when it first came out, was centered around the idea of a dynamic hold. Meanwhile, the Procession reverb combined reverb and modulation, flange, filter, and tremolo. According to the manual, Sunlight Stereo focuses mostly on post-reverb processing and motion, and this is a quote from the manual, by the way, sending its reverb through a short delay, filter, and volume control with an LFO available to modulate any and all of those parameters to create flanging, chorusing, moving filters, and tremolo. So not just a reverb pedal, and we're not just going to use it as a reverb pedal. This has a lot of stuff going on. If you haven't seen my demos for Bathing or Black Fountain Stereo, my approach to these is less about showing you everything this pedal is capable of, because that's bananas. Instead, I'm going to focus on walking you through how this pedal works and highlight a few of my favorite sounds along the way so you can steal those settings. To start, I have nearly every knob except dry, which is the volume of the dry signal, at 0 or in a position where it's disengaged. So I can prove that. The first knob we're going to look at other than dry, which is right there, is down here. The last of these little knobs is the volume of your wet signal. I've gone ahead and turned that up to noon to match the dry signal. When both dry and wet are engaged, you get a little, quote, halo of a very short reverb around your dry signal, parallel to the pedal's main reverb, which you should hear there. Right now I have the top little knob, that's the time knob, all the way down. Time sets the delay time of the post-reverb delay, so we'll turn it up to 2. Looking right above that, feedback sets the feedback of the post-reverb delay. We're starting with that all the way down. Already we have a little slapback delay or a doubling sound, so I guess you could call that sound sample 1. Let's turn that feedback up to 3 for fun. When completely maxed, the feedback knob self-oscillates. And here's something that I think is kind of funny, you might appreciate. When you turn the time knob down. That would actually be pretty hilarious to have assigned to the expression. It's very Looney Tunes when the time approaches and then reaches 0. That little just makes me happy. We'll turn feedback and time back down, and we're going to skip on back to the decay knob, which sets the length of the reverb trails. And we will start with that at 9. Before even introducing dynamic or the LFO at all, this is how it sounds with everything completely disengaged except for decay, wet, and dry. And that's in fact my second Sunlight setting, just a simple, beautiful, washy reverb. again, just a really nice, impactful reverb sound. You can adjust the tone somewhat with this tone knob, which sets the cutoff frequency of the post-delay filter from 0 to 5 kilohertz. We'll talk more about the filter later, and in fact, not too much later. Going back to dynamic, which is currently in the middle, and by the way, there's a nice little, I think it's called a detente there to help you find it. The reason we want to start with that in the middle is that at noon, no dynamics are engaged. Below noon, that's to the left, aka counterclockwise, your guitar's signal strength causes the LFO to go faster or slower depending on the rate setting, which is the first knob in the bottom row. Above noon, a dynamic element is introduced to the reverb where only signals above a certain threshold are let in. I want to start with the dynamic side, which will lead us to our third sound setting. The farther to the right that you turn that knob, the more input volume you'll need to trigger the reverb. If you are running something really hot in your signal chain, you may need to turn that up a lot. Probably not all the way, but I have a vintage output pickups, so if I crank it, nothing. So we can tune that, but I've realized I didn't mention the guitar or the amp at all. For the amp, I'm using the Chimera plugin, the Benson Chimera plugin from Mixwave. This guitar is a custom build by Nicola Lozanak. It has custom shop pickups from Seymour Duncan, and there I'll have links to everything involved in this setup in the video description. If you're curious, some of those may be affiliate links, so thanks. Yeah, we didn't hear anything, so let's go ahead and tune it. I have a riff, this little riff from a song I worked on a long time ago with Sunday Crush called Think a Thought. It's a little single note plucky thingy. I want it so that when I really dig in on some of those notes, the reverb will be engaged, and I'm going to turn up the decay just to make it more apparent. So I need a little bit more. You may even want to turn the dry signal up and the wet down, depending on what you're going for. But yes, this is the third way I'd use Sunlight Stereo, to make certain notes or chords in my playing stick around for longer. Let's hear it a little bit more. We're going to get into the LFO stuff you experience when you turn the dynamic knob to the left, but first there's one tiny knob I haven't gotten into at all. Frequency. Frequency, right there, is a filter knob. You can set it as a low pass, band pass, high pass, or band reject filter. I have it set to a high pass filter. That leads us to our fourth sound setting. If I turn the dry knob all the way down, put dynamic back in the middle, I can sweep the frequency knob and you can hear the way it sounds wide open and how turning it removes those lows. And the reverb off. I've also got my handy dandy expression ramper here because I want to show you what I think is a cool way to use Sunlight as a sweeping filter. You can assign any of the knobs on Sunlight Stereo to expression. To do so, first put the knobs you want to assign in the positions where you want the heel position to be. Then you hold down the on-off switch, turn the knob to where you want the toe position to be, and release. The A position on the expression ramper, the heel, is presently set to about noon with a high-pass filter engaged. B is set to wide open, so knob all the way down. I have the movement set to one shot so I can get this cool effect where the filter opens up as I'm strumming. And that's honestly something I've had to do at gigs before, get that kind of opening up sound. And I really struggled with using a dedicated EQ pedal because I couldn't get the taper nearly that smooth. So yes, that's the next setting I'd personally use with a Sunlight stereo pedal. And it sounds really good going the other way too. All right, enough of that. Let's get into the dynamic LFO stuff. Briefly, one thing I forgot to mention is that the Sunlight stereo, like the other Old Blood Noise pedals in this form factor, it's a TRS stereo in and out. And if you have TRS cables, that's great. Y breakout cables. But the gist is, if you want to use it as stereo, you're going to need to eventually have a way to split that stereo signal into 2 amplifiers or into 2 inputs, as I'm using 2 inputs in an audio interface. So I do have TRS to dual TS cables. I don't have any that are that long, so I'm using the handy dandy Old Blood Noise split meld pedal to turn a TRS signal into 2 TS signals. So shout out to this product right here. This is the older version. I think the newer one is a bit smaller. I just wanted to mention that because it's important to know when you're buying a pedal like this that you may need different cables or you may need a second device like this. Now let's get into the dynamic LFO stuff. I'm not sure how well you can see it, probably not at all, but next to each of these little knobs, there's a little button. You press that button to assign time, frequency, wet, or all of the above to the LFO, of which there are 6 shapes. Shapes are tape, which was inspired by the original Sunlight's tape mode, triangle, square, ramp up, ramp down, and random. I'm mostly going to use tape and triangle and random. I'm never been a big fan of ramp up and ramp down, but you don't care. For the dynamic knob, anywhere to the left of noon engages the LFO. Below noon, your signal strength causes the LFO to go faster or slower, depending on the rate setting with increasing intensity. We're going to start with the LFO assigned to frequency because that is what we were just using. Again, dry all the way down, no decay right now because I really just want you to hear the LFO. Frequency is at about 10, 30, 11 o'clock. We're starting with the rate at 9. The depth I have at 3, and dynamics are in the middle. That's at noon. And I hope you're wearing headphones. Let's move dynamics to 9. Depth is a little intense. You can really hear how much faster the rate is when I do those hard strums versus when I do the softer arpeggio. And compare that to when we were first listening with a dynamics knob at noon, where you could still hear the LFO, but there was nothing dynamic about it. I'm not going to call that sound setting 5 or give that the next dedicated sound sample because setting 5 is a dynamic panning tremolo. We'll keep dry down again. I've unassigned frequency. I'm going to open that all the way up by turning it all the way down. I've assigned wet instead of frequency. Dynamics are, let's do it slightly counterclockwise. Rate to about 10. Depth cranked. Shape is tape. Decay is still off. Feedback and time are also down. I'm going to add just the tiniest bit of decay. That is for sure my favorite non-reverb way to use a Sunlight stereo. Like, come on, man, this is awesome. Now for sound 6, let's make this a chorus. We will assign LFO to time, dry, go into noon, dynamics to noon, rate to 11, though that is largely taste, depth 9 to 10, shape will move to triangle, decay again just barely on, feedback around 1 or 2, time to around 11. Frequency is still wide open, and wet's at noon. I like the feedback up a bit because it's what makes it a little bit more fluttery, but you can turn that down to taste. Time is also largely to taste, but I feel like it gets a little rubber bandy if it's too long, and it doesn't sound right if it's too short. So let's hear it. Bonus points for turning dynamics to 9 or below to get an envelope-y chorus. I also like to drop rate a lot when I use the dynamic option for most of these settings because it can get pretty fast otherwise. You can just kill the dry signal and drop decay to make it a vibrato. Also going to turn rate to noon and dynamics to noon. Not a big vibrato person, so that's all you're going to hear of that. Okay, listen. I know this is supposed to be a reverb pedal, but I like the less obvious stuff, the non-reverb stuff a lot too. And I think that knowing that you can make presets that do non-washy reverb things makes this pedal a very good value, especially since it has 3 onboard presets and MIDI capabilities. But more importantly, now you know how all those assignable parameters sound on their own, so you can more intelligently, I want to say, that might not be the right word, but you can more intelligently choose how to incorporate them into the reverb. So let's build a setting that's washy and utilizes some of these LFO features. So let's start with this one that I like a lot. We'll call it sound setting 7, glitchy reverb. LFO assigned to frequency, dry at 9, decay at 2, feedback at 2, rate at 3, depth at 2, and shape to random. Time at noon, frequency at 9, wet at 2. And I'm going to have dynamics at noon for now. It has this wonderfully glitchy thing that I am obsessed with. Even turning dry up to noon, you still retain a lot of that. And I can turn the wet down a little bit so it's not too loud. If we want to mellow it, we can turn dynamics to 3 and set decay to noon. And then you'll hear it when I hit that big E chord. We'll get the reverb with the glitchy, but keep more clarity for the rest of our notes. can turn dynamics to about 230 and get that plucky thing I was playing earlier. Let's quickly hear those settings mostly the same, but with the wet blend engage instead of frequency, dynamics to 9 instead of 3, and shape back to tape. Sound sample 8. And, you know, let's slow the rate to 9 because we're using the dynamic side. I love how the reverb pans while the dry stays dead center. Yeah, that rules. This rules. Links to buy in the video description. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for understanding. Until next time, my name is Emily. Goodbye.